Hello, welcome again to Precious Online Chemistry Tutorial. In today's class, I will be teaching you the mechanism of electrolysis. During electrolysis, there are three stages involved. These three steps or stages must happen during every electrolysis. In mechanism of electrolysis, we talk about how electrolysis occur, what really happens there, what type of reaction, how does it happen. So these three stages will help you to master everything that happens during the mechanism of electrolysis. Okay, the first one is ionization. Ionization simply means splitting of a compound into ions. As we all know, we have two types of ions, the cations and the anions. The cations we call the positively charged ions, while the anions are the negatively charged ions. In our previous class, we discussed these terminologies. Okay, so now, how does ionization start? Remember that during electrolysis, it's only electrolytes that can conduct electricity. So we use electrolytes for electrolysis. Now, these electrolytes, immediately they are dissolved in water or they are melted to be in the molten state, ionization begins. They will start splitting into ions. So for example, okay, here we have two electrolytes, sodium chloride molten and sodium chloride aqueous. Now, what's the difference between these two? Molten simply means it was melted, no water involved. Aqueous simply means it is dissolved in water. So immediately this sodium chloride starts to melt, it will split, it will ionize to form the positive and the negative ions. Hence, this is what will happen. This is the ionization of sodium chloride in molten state. It splits into sodium ion and chloride ion. Then in aqueous state, remember that in aqueous state, it is not just the sodium chloride that is there, it was dissolved in water. So there will be splitting of two compounds, the sodium chloride and the water. This is exactly what happens in ionization during electrolysis. Now, if it is in molten state, it splits into sodium ion and chloride ion. Sodium being the cation and chlorine being the anion. But if it is in aqueous state, the sodium chloride splits into sodium ion and chloride ion, and the water also ionize to form hydrogen ion and hydroxide ion. Okay, now this is how other compounds also ionize. The only thing is that you need to master the charges that they will have. So the second step is migration. Migration of the ions to opposite poles. Migration simply means to move. Migration of the ions to the opposite poles. In our previous class, we talked about the electrodes involved during electrolysis, that we have the anode and the cathode. So, anode is the positive pole, while the cathode is the negative pole. You can call it positive electrode and negative electrode. Now, we are doing the electrolysis of sodium chloride molten or sodium chloride aqueous. So now let's consider sodium chloride aqueous. Now, migration of ions. The ions wants to move. The ions wants to migrate to their respective electrode or to their opposite electrodes. So the anions will migrate to the anode, while the cations will migrate to the cathode. So what will happen here is that the anions will come here and the cations will go here. So during migration, if this is the electrolysis we are considering, electrolysis of sodium chloride aqueous, what happens now? This is a cation, positively charged. This is anion, negatively charged. So the cations Here we have two cations, sodium ion and hydrogen ion. They will migrate to the cathode, the negative electrode. That's why I said migration of the ions to their opposite poles. So sodium ion and hydrogen ion will migrate here. Then for the anode, which is the positive electrode, the anions will migrate to the anode. So here we have two anions. Then they will migrate. This is what happens. If it is sodium chloride molten, tell me how the ions will migrate. Which ion comes to the anode and which ion comes to the cathode. Okay, so for the third one, ionic discharge and chemical decomposition of the compound. So for the ionic discharge and chemical decomposition of this compound, these ions that migrated to their respective electrodes, one of the ions will be discharged while the remaining one will go back to the electrolyte. And for us to be able to determine which of these ions migrates and for us to determine which of these ions will be deposited and the one that will return back to the electrolyte, there are three factors involved. I will mention these three factors in this video, and our next video, we are going to treat these three factors deeply, that you can be able to carry out any electrolysis given to you without thinking too much. So the three factors involved in determining the ionic discharge are the position of the ion in the electrochemical series, the concentration of the ion in the electrolyte, and the nature of the electrode. These are the three factors that will determine which of these ions will be discharged. So in our next video, we are going to discuss these three factors explicitly, and everything about electrolysis will become as simple as possible. Don't forget, subscribe, like, share, and comment. If there is any other thing you want us to discuss deeply, drop it in the comment section. See you. Bye.